Lawyers of Reddit, what was the least defendable case ever brought to you? If you enjoy this video, consider giving it a like and subscribing. A woman wanted me to sue her previous lawyer for charging her a lot of money, but producing almost no work to justify his fees. She gave me what she told me was the lawyer's total work product, a page printed off the internet for which she said she was charged thousands of dollars for legal advice. She had already brought a claim via my jurisdiction's disciplinary body for lawyers. She had lost and wanted to bring an appeal. The judgment kept referring to documents that I hadn't seen. I pushed her to give me everything, and she came in with multiple files full of immaculate legal work that totally justified the fee she was fighting. We told her to get lost, but she wasted a lot of my time before we realized she was full of herself. I had a client in a personal injury trial that divulged for the first time under oath that there was another passenger in the car that bailed at the scene, and that she had received from a bystander witness a video right after the accident that she wanted to use as surprise evidence to get over on the insurance company. I had to do a lot of damage repair assuring the judge and opposing counsel that I had no idea about any of this. I spoke with her numerous times before the trial and did a fair amount of due diligence trying to find witnesses and other evidence because it was pretty he said she said at that point. I have a good reputation with them, so they trusted me, but to say I was heated at my client is an understatement. It also ruined her credibility. I had a different client in one of my first cases between two brothers suing each other, who hated each other, who, when asked do you swear to tell the truth, replied no. When asked to clarify, he said something like well, if the other side lies then I'll have to lie too, and he lies all the time. We assured him that he needed to tell the truth too, and they'd all be under oath. He still refused, even when we told him he couldn't testify if he didn't agree to tell the truth. After that incident, the judge, clerk, and some senior attorneys who were present approached me and said they had never seen anything like that in 30+ years of practicing law. Yep, first year in, and I get the crazy stuff. Sums up my practice nicely. So this guy ordered a pizza. Nowhere was it specified that the delivery was supposed to be done under 30 minutes, but the guy assumed it because movies. The delivery arrived 1 hour later, and to apologize, even if it wasn't necessary, they brought him his order and an additional beef pizza. The guy wanted our firm to sue them because he is Hindu, doesn't eat beef, and apparently felt offended. Also this one time this dude wanted us to sue his neighbor because he assumed the guy was practicing black magic. This guy murdered his father, then during the trial he sent death threats to his mother. Ladies and gentlemen, take pity on my client, he's soon to be an orphan. Worked in-house for a famous character company with a large fan base. A few crazes a year call in. A guy called in claiming that we stole characters that he created and demanded to be compensated. I calmly ask them to provide more details so I can determine whether this has any merit to it. He states he designed the characters himself and gave it to the well-known actual creator when he was a kid, and the creator pawned them off as his own. I asked him when he was born, and it's a good 20 years after these characters were actually created. I ask him to explain this, and he pivots and says he also created some other well-known famous characters and brands. Characters and brands that are not owned by my company. I kindly ask that if he wants to pursue anything to send us something in writing and hang up. I figured if he wasn't going to do some really basic research on his own claim, he wasn't going to spend any time to write it up. Never heard from him again. Not my client, but my dad, and the hospital he worked at, was sued by a gentleman after he saved his wife's life. Details: patient is pregnant with 8th child and miscarries. The fetus is removed, but the patient starts bleeding uncontrollably. The only option available is a hysterectomy. It was either that, or she dies right there on the table. My dad gets called in to do the surgery, performs it successfully, hooray. The patient's husband is quite devout and beyond pissed that his wife can't have any more kids. So he sued the hospital. No firm would represent him, and he ended up bringing proceedings himself. Went all the way to trial, and he lost hard. My dad's lawyer hated divorce and custody cases because he always gets the stupid clients. Wife wanted everything in the divorce. Her boyfriend sent a video to her husband. It showed the wife and boyfriend having sex in her husband's house. Wife, clearly at fault, still wanted everything. She didn't get anything and was charged with adultery. Husband celebrated by having a banana split. One pointer, I messed up this one. The charge with adultery happened in my home country of the Philippines. Wife was caught banging a neighbor and her husband took her to court, where she would be charged with adultery by the local court. Wife wanted custody of her kids, and she was actually winning until she drove to her husband's place, drunk as a skunk, and threatening to kill him if he didn't withdraw from the case. Also, she forgot to mention to her lawyer that she was on antipsychotics. Guy wanted custody of his kids, but had a rap sheet a mile long along with a history of domestic abuse and threatening people on the internet. Judge tried to give him a chance, but he messed that up when he posted a tirade on his Facebook on how he'll curb stomp his kids because their mother deserved it. Woman was going to lose custody of her daughter, so she threatened to cut off her lawyer's balls if he didn't win. She said this right in front of the judge. Ex-husband denied stalking his ex-wife and putting poop in her mailbox. His social media account says otherwise. He even took selfies with his ex in the background, her not knowing the guy who wasn't supposed to be near was near her. Husband wanted a divorce. He was cheating on his wife and concocted a plan to have her be seduced by another guy. Another guy takes her and they both fall in love for real. Guy fesses up and husband is the one getting served divorce papers. My dad's divorce with his first wife. Basically dad's lawyer took any and all evidence and it was discovered she was cheating on him with men while husband was at work and it was known her husband, my dad, can't have kids. But she was 5 months pregnant. Everyone thought she was just fat when the proceedings started. Dad's lawyer also pretty much got my dad everything. Anything in his house is his, and the only thing she got were the clothes in her closet. She couldn't have the grand piano, the fur coats, the jewelry, or even any of the wedding gifts. First wife and her boyfriend tried to break into the house, but dad had house sitters he paid with the stuff she wanted. Dad also had to pay her money during the proceedings. It was like $30 to $50 a week, but his lawyer said not to pay that. My dad had a client who was on trial for being a felon in possession of firearms, possession of stolen property, burglary, and distribution of narcotics. Guy had multiple pictures of himself on Facebook holding guns, drugs, and cash, and had videos of himself both breaking into someone's house and stealing a gun as well as selling crack on several occasions. Despite my dad basically telling the genius he was going to prison either way and to plead out for a reduced sentence, dude still pleaded not guilty. We still occasionally joke that the guy clearly wasn't competent to stand trial by virtue of being so dumb. Not a lawyer, I was a jailer and used to pull double duty as a bailiff. A guy stole a pickup truck and was later captured passed out behind the wheel, parked on a sidewalk surrounded by a ludicrous amount of drugs and guns. His legal defense? He elected to represent himself because he wasn't done being stupid. Double jeopardy, you can't charge me for theft, drugs, and felon in possession of a weapon because I've already been convicted all of those charges before. In short, during his jury trial he admitted to doing it, but explained with a smug grin that since he had already done time for the same charges from another case before, that he could not be prosecuted for them ever again. This is not how double jeopardy works, folks. He's in prison for 20 years now. If he'd taken legal counsel he could have easily cut a deal for 5. Guy is driving pounds of drugs across the country, multiple state lines. Decides to pick up hitchhikers on the way. Keeps 200 g of hash oil in cup holder for easy access while driving. If you don't know, 200 g is 100x more than you'd need to smoke. Gets pulled over. Immediately tells the cop the drugs are his because he didn't want the hitchhikers to get in trouble. Somehow, we still got him 0 jail time in lieu of community service and a fat fine. Small rural county cares more about the money than sending some kid to prison. The rich don't go to prison. Worked in family law in California for like 2 years before deciding I'd bang myself if I didn't change career paths. In CA, the obligation to pay spousal support, alimony, ends when the recipient begins cohabitation with a new romantic partner. A guy who was positively getting screwed in half in his monthly payments came to the office and said he was aware of the rule about cohabitation and wanted me to argue his point in court. You see, his ex was a narcissist. she was in love with and had begun cohabitation with herself. Her presence in her apartment should count the same as if there were a romantic partner there. He was bordering on begging me to take his money. I refused. It's like a 100-way tie for first place. Spoiler alert, they had the drugs on them. Less frequently, it was a gun. And yeah, let's just say the I have a permit defense for the latter was not something we had to worry about round those parts. You'd be surprised how quickly cases become at least theoretically defensible as soon as you establish any distance whatsoever between the client and the contraband, though. In fact, I'd say there's a systematic bias in juries and lots of inconsistency in the relevant case law about how difficult it is, and or ought to be, to prove possession beyond a reasonable doubt. It errs, of course, in favor of the prosecution. I read a patent and told my bosses it was both invalid and infringed by no one. It had 10 means for element in each patent claim that no one would practice or that weren't supported in the written description. Partners, my bosses, new to patent litigation, sued on the patent anyway using young, inexperienced, unseasoned attorneys in the firm. 3 years later, after billing the client millions of dollars, every defendant won by proving each claim either not infringed or invalid. Then my employer appealed and billed the client another load of money, with a young attorney in charge of the appeal that didn't understand the underlying issues on any level because he was a former teacher instead of patent attorney. It was such a bad patent no one would settle at any point in the case. My bosses were blood-sucking trolls. I quit for these and similar, parallel reasons. The firm finally imploded. A lady didn't pay her general contractor upwards of $20,000 after the job was finished because of a dozen or so minor complaints, like he was slow. Told her she should pay and we could help her with her complaints, else he will probably be successful getting a lien on her home. She didn't pay. He got a lien on her home. Even offered to help her stash the funds in escrow pending their dispute and would prevent a lien in the meantime. Nope. My best guess is that she didn't have the money and was attempting a tantrum to get out of it. This was my one internship, literally the first person to ever approach me in a legal capacity. Later that fall, she showed up to my school and was demanding my info from the front office, who handled it well, and I never saw her. She blames me for losing her home. I told you to pay or you would lose your home. You didn't pay and lost your home. Surprised Pikachu face. If you enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing.